Blessings, 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 everyone. I know I am jumping on unplanned, unannounced. It's been a while since I've been on. I have been busy doing some um, working on some things behind the scenes, all very, very much good stuff. But I wanted to come on, and I felt led to come on, and I'm just gonna just go ahead and just talk, and then as folks come on, and hopefully you will like and share. Let me know when you come on. Just say hello. Um, but I wanted to come on because there is so much. There's so much going on, not just in the U.S., although a lot of what we are seeing, both in the U.S. and on the global stage, is predicated on what is happening in the U.S. But I wanted to just come on and kind of talk to folks about some of the things that they need to be thinking about in terms of their finances and their financial situation, so on and so forth, as we navigate this new space and this new landscape, if you will. Um, so where to start? And I'm not just coming on to give some additional commentary about Venezuela and why President Donald Trump did what he did in Venezuela, and all of that kind of stuff. There are enough people talking in that space, if you will. But I just wanted to share some of my thoughts and some things that I think we all need to be thinking about when it comes to your personal finances, just given the current landscape that we're in right now. Okay. So when we think about America and America um, as a, what do you want to call it? As not just a country, but just as an economic power on the world stage, or as an empire, if you will. America has gone through what we would call the cycles of, um, or it is going through certain phases, if you will, of where it is in terms of being an empire. Okay. Hey, Cece, how are you? Um, and so uh, most economists will tell you there are like six phases in terms of an empire, six common stages. Okay. And depending on where you are and what you believe or whatever, um, there are many folks, I would say many economists would say that America, although it's been a powerhouse from a military perspective and from just like an economic perspective, so on and so forth, most folks would say that it is on a decline, right? And knowing that and having said that, there are particular things that you need to do in terms of your finances, um, that you need to consider and you need to have at the forefront. Okay. Um, Now, let's talk about some of the stuff that we are seeing, at least in the news and stuff, and maybe some of the root of why all of that is going on, especially given the fact. And if you believe that America is an empire that's on a decline, it makes sense as to the certain moves that are being made. All right. So when you look at Venezuela and what happened there, we know that Venezuela has a lot of oil reserves. We know that Venezuela has a lot of natural resources, if you will. We know that certain relations, as far as resources, were happening between Venezuela and China. We know that there are other things on the global landscape that were happening that wasn't necessarily beneficial to the United States. And so we see President Trump coming in now and making the moves that he made with Venezuela and with that former leader and former president there. I think the root of it and the crux of some of the reasons why President Trump did what he did is to ensure that the U.S. can continue to thrive on the um, on the global stage, right? Because we know that America um, is has the global reserve currency status, and that is something that is definitely what what they want to keep. They want to protect that because it's important to them. Um, that they keep that and maintain that so that they can continue to do some of the things economically that they can do. So, for example, printing money. So you may hear the discussions about, hey, printing money, so on and so forth. That literally just gives the feds the opportunity to just go in their computer, do, and if they want to add more dollars to the economy, they can do that. Okay. Now I'm oversimplifying some of these steps here. And I'm just talking through some of the things that you're saying. Hey, Angela, how are you? So when we think about the US, right, we think about the US from this perspective of it being a wealthy country. And I think that we all can agree that America has definitely been a country that has not only been wealthy or is wealthy in terms of resources, in terms of its culture, because a lot of what America has done in terms of exports is it has exported its culture, right? Its food, clothes, just all of the things that come with culture. America has exported that around the globe. Okay. The other thing, and I got some notes here because I just wanted to make sure that I didn't forget some critical things as I'm talking through some of these things on today. But what I want you to understand is that the government in the US continues to overspend. It continues to overspend. So much like if you were in your household and you make $35,000 a year, but you spend $50,000 a year, eventually that's not sustainable. Okay, it's not sustainable. And so that is essentially what the US government is somewhat forced to do at this time because of a lot of the social programs that the US has that we have to fund. Okay, I'm not throwing shade at none of the social programs. So Social Security, Medicare, I'm not throwing any shade at any of those social programs, but these are things that we have put into place in this country, and we have to continue to sustain that and to keep these programs going. And so the government has to put the money to those social programs and just not let those social programs fall apart. So that's part of the reason for the government overspend. And then the tax revenue that is generated in this country is not at the level that it can cover all of the spending that goes behind the social programs, which is the reason why the US government is running the deficit that it has, and it does. Now, the last time I checked, I think we were up to $39 trillion. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong on that particular number because it's been a while, excuse me, since I've checked that. But this is where we are, right? And so if you think about it, technically the government doesn't have a lot of money. And then behind the scenes, the banking system doesn't have a lot of liquidity, i.e. money, right now as well. So with all of that, now the government, the president has a very difficult decision in what do I do to ensure that the U.S. continues to maintain its global reserve currency, maintain its military power, maintain its status on the global stage as being this superpower, and really keep the economy going. And so that's why you see President Trump doing some of the things that he's doing on the global stage, even while you see, I was reading somewhere where someone had posted that President Trump is even talking about making changes to the housing market, in that he wants to ban big corporations from being able to buy up single family homes. And there's a reason behind that. Why? Because the housing market is one of the bedrocks to the US economy. And if you don't have enough buyers, home buyers out there buying those homes, and if he doesn't do something in order to bring the price of the homes down, it becomes unsustainable, right? So I say all of this to say, and hopefully you guys are still there with me, but I'm saying all of this to say, because of where we are no longer in a time frame of where our parents were and how they govern and manage their finances. I would say even 10 years ago, we're not in that same position. So you've got to begin to look at how you manage your finances differently, how you manage your households differently, how you manage your investments differently, and absolutely how you manage your retirement very, very differently. Okay. And then one more thing that I would add to, one other thing that President Trump is doing that's very, very different from previous presidents, and that is he's not necessarily taking the position of some of the diplomatic efforts and stances that other and former U.S. presidents have had. What do I mean by that? So he is not in any way and I'm not throwing shade at the president by saying this, but he's not a kumbaya type of president, right? Like, he's not trying to bring folks together and say, can we just all get along? He is mainly saying, like, look, I need y'all to go on over here and figure that out, right? Like, this is going to be America first. Y'all figure that out over here. We're going to go on over here and do that. Okay. So the moves that was made with Venezuela, the moves that were the counter moves that he made with, I should say, against China, it is all to secure the position of the United States. It's all to secure the United States control over resources, oil, gold, Bitcoin, so on and so forth. And really to maintain its position of having wealth, keeping that global reserve currency, and keeping the U.S. economy intact. So, having said all of that, so that was like 13 minutes, 12 minutes, whatever you want to call it, of just kind of putting a preface before I give you some of these nuggets in terms of what you need to be doing with your finances in this time. And again, I can't reiterate enough that we're not necessarily in the time frame that we were in 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20, 30 years ago. We're not there. So we have to think differently. We have to position ourselves very differently, and we have to behave very differently in terms of our finances. All right. So, one of the things that I want you to think about as it pertains to where you are financially is this. Okay. And I'm going straight to how you want to think about your bottom line and how you want to govern your finances. This is not a time, and I've said this before, this isn't a time to be out and spending a whole lot on things that aren't going to sustain and prepare your family and prepare your household. Okay. It is not a time to run up a bunch of debt. You need to be managing your finances in such a way that you are eliminating debt. Okay. You need to be lean on expenses and trying to keep as much of your income as possible. Okay. Um, I pray for those that are in a position right now where they've been laid off, um, or that kind of thing. If you are in that position, this is a time for you to be reorganizing. So that means looking at what can I do with the resources I do have available to me. How do I need to reorganize my life, reorganize what I currently have at my disposal? Maybe you need to call a family meeting. Maybe you need to think about reorganizing your current housing situation. Maybe you need to think about reorganizing, your car and just different things like that. But this is a time to really reflect, really do some hard thinking about where you are right now. Okay. um and let me just say this. I'm not a financial advisor. I'm a certified financial coach. So this is not necessarily financial advising in any way, but this is just coming straight from the heart in terms of some things I was just thinking about and some notes that I jotted down today, that I wanted to share with folks as far as what they need to be doing in this time. Okay. So, in terms of your finances, your paycheck, your week to week paycheck, we want to be lean on expenses. You want to be trying to get out of debt as much as possible. And you want to be preparing for emergencies. Having a little stash in case of emergency is the best thing that you can do for yourself for right now. Okay. Lean on expenses, reducing your debt, and being prepared for emergencies. That's where you want to be in terms of your finances. When you think about your investments and your retirement, thinking about investments and retirement, remember, maybe about 10, 20 years ago, maybe even longer than that, maybe it's been about 40 years now, many investment advisors would say, oh, a 60-40 portfolio, right? So 60% invested in stock, 40% invested in bonds, and that would get you, over 40 years or 30 years, how many, years you wanted to stash away money in a 401k or other retirement account, and that would fund you or get you enough money so that you could ride off into the sunset and retire. Gone are those days. Hey, Prophet Renee, gone are those days. So even when you look at the current landscape, both in the US and on the global stage, you cannot just simply just sock away money into the stock market and into the bond market and simply think that you're going to be okay in 10, 20, 30 years from now. That's not the way to be thinking about it. Okay. You need to think about your investment and your retirement horizons in shorter increments, because this current landscape is so volatile. There is not any assumptions that any of us can make in terms of where the stock market and where the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ and all of those will be in 5 or 10 years down the road. We can't live off of those assumptions anymore. The current landscape is too volatile to even do that. And I know there's still many people that are still investing based on those assumptions, but I'm here to say, please be prayerful and be mindful that the landscape has changed and it is not the time to operate and function off of those I'll say outdated assumptions. Okay. And again, I'm not throwing shade at anybody. I'm just challenging the current zeitgeist and the current way that we are thinking about how we should manage our finances and invest and be prepared for retirement. Okay. Some of the things you need to be thinking about, if you watch current markets, and I'll be honest, I don't have a whole lot invested in the stock market. I'm a little bit of a contrarian when it comes to some investment types, if you will. But if you look at the run that like gold and some of those other places, if you look at like where we are with some of those things, you'll see that gold has been on a rise, silver has been on a rise. So there's definitely some things to be said about even the larger population having some speculation as to really how volatile this current landscape is. So one of the things to understand about gold and silver and commodities and precious metals is this. they don't necessarily run in the same direction or trend in the same direction as the stock market. Oftentimes you'll see gold and silver, they are trending upward in terms of the certain if folks feel like the volatility is going to be there when it comes to the current economy, and I should say uncertainty, if you will, is going to be there with the economy, that's when you'll see the price of gold and silver continue to rise. And that's what we're seeing at this time. All right. What else? So the second thing that I wrote down in terms of where you need to be and how you need to be thinking about things is you need to be prepared for the best of times and the worst of times. We need to be prepared for the best of times and the worst of times. You're probably like, what does that even mean? Being prepared for, and this thing is telling me, I'm getting this message that Facebook is having some issues. So I don't know what's going on with Facebook right now. But I'm gonna keep going. I'm on YouTube right now. So at any rate, where was I? We need to be prepared for the best of times and the worst of times. We need to be prepared for the best of times and worst of times. And so what I'm saying is we need to be nimble. You need to be nimble. So if you follow what I'm saying initially in terms of being lean on your expenses, getting out of debt, and being prepared for emergencies, I think that's the best way to position yourself. It is the best way to position yourself for being ready for the best of times and the worst of times, because we just don't know. We just don't know how things are going to go in this current landscape and in this current economic environment. Okay. So being prepared for the best of times and the worst of times means this: you need to have a small stockpile of things. So you need to have key household items. You should have, some non-perishable foods. You should have medicines, toiletries, all of those kinds of things, just in case something were to break out. You have those things at your disposal. Okay. Just in case something, the supply chain stops and comes to a halt like it did during that time period a few years ago. You are well prepared, and at least prepared to get through a period of time uninterrupted, if you will. Okay. The other thing that I want you to start thinking about is having networks of people, supplies, or access to supplies outside of the current system. You need to be prepared to have networks outside this current financial system. Okay. And that can look a number of different ways. But nevertheless, you want to make sure that you have that. As I stated before, if you are struggling financially, if you are having issues with housing and different things like that, even if you may have been laid off and you're having a hard time finding another job, now is the time to reconsider and to reorganize and to reprioritize and to really just gain clarity as to what it is you need to do in order to not just survive, but to thrive, not only in the year of 2026, but even for the remainder of this decade. My next bullet point is to my churches and to my nonprofit organizations. It's really a good time, and I'm going to admonish those that are on the line tonight. There needs to be a more concerted effort around community organizing and partnership. And I'm going to add this as well, really around group economics. If your church is not talking about it, and I know there's some churches out there, I've heard and I've seen on social media, you've had some churches that have, given their giving their members who were laid off, like, $2,000 towards expenses and things like that. And I think that's wonderful. And I think it's great. I think we've got to take that a step further, and we've got to be able to build the infrastructure and to build the systems and the networks to sustain a group economic effort. I know there's some profits, some economic profits, like Apostle Giles, that are out there, and they're doing those things. We need a more wholesale change around that. I'm working on a project in that area, and hopefully I'll be able to bring that out, before the summertime. But we need more wholesale changes in that regard. It's going to be important that we do those types of things. And then just continuing, I think it's a time where we need to partner, and we need to merge business with ministry. And ministry leaders and businesses need to partner together in that group economic effort, for sure. Okay. Um, I think that's all I wanted to share from you based on the notes that I had. Before I leave the line on tonight, just a couple things. So I want you to continue to keep your eye on what's happening, on not just in the US, but on the global stage, because I think that's going to have a lot of what we see in terms of prices, in terms of jobs, in terms of housing, in terms of interest rates, so on and so forth. All of those things are going to be influenced by what the United States can do and continue to do to maintain its economic position. Okay. So keep your eye on the global stage, keep your eye on the local markets, and local government, and the US government as well. Don't just simply focus on the things that Trump says. Focus on what he's doing. Focus on what he's doing, and look at the larger landscape, and look at the patterns behind what he is actually doing as he's making these moves. Okay. Um, I know that by the end of this month, the government is going to have to do some additional temporary funding. So it's going to be important to understand and to see what shall happen there. I'm praying that folks don't have to worry about another shutdown. So we've got to keep our eye on that. I do think in part some of the moves that was made with Venezuela has to do with that, and is tied to that as well. As I mentioned, interest rates. So as long as the U.S. can continue to maintain control of certain resources, I think the next step and the next push, if you will be to continue to bring interest rates down. Why is that important? Because now that puts money back into the economy, that increases liquidity, that gets the economy moving, right? Because now they can ease lending standards, and we are in an economy that is very much predicated upon consumption. So the more that money, the monetary policy is an easy one, the more that money flows, and the more that we can see happening in that regard. I think the other thing that we've got to keep our eye on as far as those interest rates are concerned, as more money is pumped into the system, that is what gives way and lends itself to inflation. So that's just another thing that we've got to continue to keep our eye on. The last two pieces is around housing and the job market. Housing and the job market. If there's not something done in the way of making sure that people stay employed, that is going to have an effect on the housing market. I've not looked at foreclosure numbers or anything like that, but hey, if people aren't working, if people are unemployed, and those numbers continue to go up, that means eventually it's going to hit the housing market, because now people can't pay their mortgages. And I am not speaking prophetically and saying that these things will happen. I'm just putting things out there for you to think about and pray about, and just be mindful of as we navigate this space. Okay. One thing I am going to say about the job market, there is a shift there. There is a shift. And that shift is more towards entrepreneurship. We had already been pushed into this space of, the gig economy. I think that is only going to continue to proliferate, and continue to grow, and continue to expand, as folks are, let go from jobs, or, as companies continue to reorganize and lay people off. That's only going to continue to cause the job market to evolve. And with the growing, call it insurgence of AI, that's only going to continue to influence the housing market as well. So I hope this has been a little bit beneficial. I know I talked about a couple different things, kind of, starting from call it a high level overview, and kind of came down to where you are at your kitchen table. But it's a lot of things that we need to consider as we move forward. The main thing is, let's be careful. Let's be prepared. Let's not be out spending a whole lot. Let's not be out doing a whole lot of extra, and let's prepare our families and our communities and our churches. Let's prepare to continue to, or let's prepare to thrive as we go forward in 2026. And look, I know this is not a message people want to be talking about, folks out here doing vision boards and different things like that. And speaking of vision, so I am, hey, Kingdom Chosen 12 blessings. Speaking of vision, on next Thursday, I am launching a kingdom study. So what is a kingdom study? We all have attended, in the church world, we've all attended Bible study. And we've, I thank all of those who have been faithful Bible study teachers and scholars. But I want to begin to really focus in on the kingdom and the kingdom of God, and our authority as kingdom citizens, as kingdom ambassadors, as kingdom sons, and all of the things that we are in and according to scripture. And so starting next Thursday at 7:30 p.m., please join me for the Foundations of Kingdom Authority. I've put some flyers out there on Facebook. I'll continue to post those, but go to my Facebook profile and you can see the flyer there, and you can get the ID for Zoom. I do not want to do this live. There's some things that we need to dig into and we need to talk about. But my first session is going to be around vision, and just teaching on some of those kingdom principles around vision. Every January we start talking about resolutions and vision boards and, this, that, and the third. But what are the kingdom principles behind that? And why is vision important? And, what does God really want us to do with vision, and how does our vision impact the kingdom and kingdom advancement? So join me next Thursday, 7:30 p.m. We are launching the Foundations for Kingdom Authority, the Foundations of Kingdom Authority. That is the kingdom study that I am launching. I want you all to join me, and I'll be coming on weekly on that Zoom line, Lord willing, for as long as he would have me to do it. And we're just going to talk about different kingdom principles. But until then, my friends, as I said, I know it's been a long time. So happy New Year to everyone. We are, if you follow the Hebraic calendar, we're in that second quarter of the Hebraic calendar. We got a lot going on. And we just need to continue to be on our watch and being the watchmen that God has called us to be. So until next week, I will see you all then. Hopefully this has been a blessing. If you have any questions or whatever, don't hesitate to reach out. You can DM me or reach out through social media. All right. Peace and blessings to you all. Good night.